And joining me now is the Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Republican Senator from Florida, Senator Rubio. Senator, thanks so much for joining us this morning. I know the NATO alliance is very important to you. You just pushed and got legislation to require the advice and consent of the Senate or an act of Congress before any president could suspend, terminate, or withdraw U.S. membership from NATO. So I want you to take a listen to something Donald Trump said yesterday on the campaign trail.
The presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay.
You've endorsed Donald Trump. Are you comfortable with him suggesting that he wouldn't defend NATO countries and actually he would invite Putin and Russia to invade them?
Well, that's not what happened, and that's not how I view that statement. I mean, he was talking about a story that he talked about happened in the past. By the way, Donald Trump was president, and he didn't pull us out of NATO. You know, in fact, American troops were stationed throughout Europe, as they are today. They were then as well. But he's telling a story, and frankly, look, Donald Trump is not a member of the Council of Foreign Relations. He doesn't talk like a traditional politician. And we've already been through this now. You'd think people had figured it out by now. What he's basically saying is, if you see the comments, he said NATO was broke or busted until he took over because people weren't paying their dues. And then he told the story about how he used leverage to get people to step up to the plate and become more active in NATO. He's not the first American president. In fact, virtually every American president at some point in some way has complained about other countries in NATO not doing enough. You know, Trump's just the first one to express it in these terms. But I have zero concern because he's been president before. I know exactly what he has done and will do with the NATO alliance. But there has to be an alliance. It's not America's defense with a bunch of small junior partners. Some of these are big countries with big economies. Many of them are doing more. The Germans are doing a lot right now.
So let's talk about the role of the U.S. when it comes to leadership. The U.S. Senate, as you know, is going to hold a procedural vote later today on legislation to provide aid to Israel and to Ukraine after that bipartisan border bill was killed earlier this week that was originally part of that package. How do you explain to leaders of Israel and Ukraine, both of them countries in the middle of wars, who say they need United States help, why you're going to vote against this legislation, why you oppose giving them the help, the aid that they need?
I don't oppose giving them the help that they need, especially in the case of Israel. And if you put the Israel thing up to, if you put Israel aid up to a vote right now, it would pass. I don't even know. Well, maybe a couple of people would vote against it, you know. But basically, it would pass very quickly. The problem is Israel's being held hostage so they could get Ukraine. As far as how do I explain it to them, before I explain anything to them, I have to explain to my constituents. I have to explain to the people of Florida. I have to explain to the American people because I'm a U.S. senator, and my number one obligation is America. If America's not strong, we can't help any of our allies. And I'll have to explain to them why the Senate is going to work all through Super Bowl weekend, which is fine with me. We're going to make a big priority, except on something that's critical to this country, which is the invasion that's going on our own border. On our own border. We're over, according to a House committee and the documents and the statistics they put out, I think these numbers are low, but let's just use them. 3.3 million people have been released into the country who arrived here illegally. Over 600,000 of them either have criminal convictions or pending criminal charges against them. I mean, this is a huge problem, and it has to be addressed. And they put out a bill. They can call it whatever they want. It wasn't a border security bill. It wasn't tough. And frankly, it was negotiated by three people. I don't begrudge it, but I wasn't involved in that negotiation. I didn't even ask for a bill. I asked for the president to reverse the executive orders that created this crisis when he took over in January of 2021.
I want to get to border in a second, but just to clarify something, are you in support of aid to Ukraine?
I think if we secure our own border here in the United States, I've said that we should help Ukraine. Look, half the money that's going to Ukraine is not going to Ukraine. It's to buy back our own weapons that we gave them, to restock our own shelves. And obviously Taiwan is included there as well. My problem is this. Before we do these things, we have to make America and Americans a priority again. In city after city now, in New York, in Denver, in Chicago, here in Florida to some extent, we are seeing the impact of this migrant crisis, not just on social services, but on the street and crime, and a crime wave that we have going on. And now you've got, like the mayor of Denver is now crying because he says the federal government has to send him a bunch of money to help with the migrant crisis. And he says the only people that are not to blame for this are the migrants themselves. Why are we spending all of this taxpayer money to house migrants, feed migrants, accommodate migrants? We have a bunch of needs in our own country for Americans. How is that not our priority? So Americans have to be our priority, and then we can help our allies.
So I totally hear what you're saying, that you want there to be a tougher border. Let's talk about this deal negotiated by Senators Langford, Murphy, and Sinema. I understand that you have issues with it. A lot of people have issues with it. The National Border Patrol Council, which is the union for Border Patrol agents, which is a very conservative group, they support this legislation. I want you to take a listen to the head of that union, Brandon Judd.
I'm going to look at this. Is this bill better than the status quo? And it absolutely is. Nobody can argue that. Nobody can argue that it's not better than what we currently have. Although it's not perfect, it is a step in the right direction. And I would rather have the step in the right direction than nothing.
Now, I know you know Brandon Judd, but for viewers, this is the head of a union that endorsed Trump strongly in 2020, consistently criticized President Biden. Go check out their Twitter feed. They mock him all the time. They say this is better than nothing. It should become law. Are you saying that the Border Patrol union is wrong?
Yes. If that's what they still believe, they're wrong. It's not better than nothing. Look, there are some things in that bill that we should do. Change the asylum standard and the like. Here's what else the bill did. The bill basically creates an asylum corps. Okay, it creates a bunch of thousands of bureaucrats, basically agents, asylum agents, that would be empowered right at the border to either allow people into the country with an immediate work permit. Today they got to wait 6 months. You give them an immediate work permit, you're going to have more people coming. That's a huge magnet. Or they have the power to immediately release them and grant them asylum, which now puts them on a 5-year path to citizenship, which is what a lot of Democrats want. They want to turn a bunch of illegal immigrants into citizens, into voters, in the hopes that those people will then turn around and vote for them in future elections, grateful because they'll know who let them in. That's a huge problem. That doesn't solve the border. It makes it worse.
This doesn't provide a path to citizenship for any of these people, just to clarify. But it raises...
Yes, it does. Absolutely it does. No, yes, it does. When you have asylum, you are on a path to citizenship. An asylum... When you get asylum, you are a year away from a green card and 4 years away from citizenship. Absolutely, it does.
But you said you approved of the asylum
have the power to grant you asylum. Not even a judge, a bureaucrat.
But the judges, as you know, are not judges per se. They're immigration judges. It's a different kind of judge. It's basically an immigration attorney who's empowered to be an immigration judge. You know that. But you said that you liked the changes to asylum. I mean, they raised the standard for asylum. The people who support this bill say it is much needed. Senator Langford calls it by far the most conservative border security bill in 4 decades. That includes, of course, the 2013 compromise that you negotiated as part of the Gang of Eight. This bill would have allowed the administration to temporarily shut down the border. It included funding for the border wall. It would have made it much more difficult to claim asylum. It added detention beds. It added ICE agents. It added deportation flights and asylum officers. And it has none of the Democratic priorities that were included in your 2013 compromise, such as a path to citizenship. Why isn't that a win for Republicans?
Well, first of all, you went through a list of long things that I don't agree with. First of all, it doesn't shut down the border. It creates the ability to shut down the border, but it also gives the president the ability to say, we're not going to do it. The emergency is suspended because it's not in our national interest to do this. By the way, you still have to process, I believe, 1,400 illegal immigrants a day, even in one of these emergencies, and it goes away in 3 years. The other thing it does is it doesn't touch the parole program, which is one of the loopholes the president has used to release all these people into this country. He's paroling them in. That's not even asylum. You talk about the asylum, about the judges, the immigration judges. Here's the difference. Those judges, their decision can be overruled by the attorney general. The attorney general could actually step in and overrule them. These asylum officers this asylum corps they're going to create, they can't even be overturned by the attorney general. These people would have the power right at the border to grant people asylum. And a lot of people don't talk about that, but it's right there in the law. It does that. As far as the standard of, yeah, it's good to change the standard, but it's going to be applied. And it ultimately is going to be applied by an administration that has proven its unwillingness to enforce our immigration laws. This entire crisis began in January of 2021 when the president decided for the first time in American history that we were going to release virtually 85, 90% of any migrant that crossed the border, including
this would change that, right?
Men.
But this would change that. Isn't this better than the status quo?
No, it would not change that. How would it change that? It would not change that.
Because it would
You
allow
come
more
in, you
people to
apply
be
the
turned back and return to the country they came from, because the asylum claim standard is so much higher.
It is not so much higher. Again, it's going to be interpreted at the border by people who've shown a propensity to interpret it very liberally. That's the reason why they're letting them in now. Because they're basically saying, we think you might have a chance at asylum, we're going to release you. Now, in the hands of another administration, perhaps that asylum standard could be applied differently. But ultimately, once you have this asylum corps hired by Mayorkas, hired by Biden, put at the border, they will have the power, if they want, they will have the power to either release people pending a future hearing with an immediate work permit, which is going to draw hundreds of thousands of more people into our country, or they are going to be able to give them asylum right there and then, on the spot. And that is a pathway to citizenship. Asylum is a pathway to citizenship.
I want to turn to another topic because we're running out of time. I want you to take a listen to something else Donald Trump said yesterday while campaigning in South Carolina. It was about Nikki Haley and her husband, Michael, who, as you know, is deployed as a major with the South Carolina National Guard.
Where's her husband? Oh, he's away. He's away. What happened to her husband? What happened to her husband? Where is he? He's gone. He knew. He knew.
He's in the Horn of Africa serving his country. Governor Haley responded by saying that, quote, someone who continually disrespects the sacrifices of military families has no business being commander-in-chief, unquote. I know when you ran against President Trump in 2016, you said his comments about John McCain were disqualifying. What do you think about these comments?
I think they're part of the increasing nastiness of this campaign and every campaign in American politics. I mean, they're calling him a grumpy old man. They're attacking Donald Trump. I remember when Melania Trump was not visible for some period of time, you had people in the media and others snickering and speculating that she was no longer with Donald Trump. We find out later, of course, that she was caring for her ailing mother, who was in the last weeks and days of her life. So this sort of nastiness, you know, Trump gives as good as he gets. We know that. It's just part of these campaign cycles. Unfortunately, people don't like it. They're turned off by it, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, I think one of the things I'm not going to do any longer is like respond to every comment Donald Trump makes and say, do you still support him? I do. And I support him because Joe Biden's a disaster. Because Joe Biden is a disaster. He's done tremendous damage to this country. America's less prosperous and the world is less safe because Joe Biden became president.
Just to remind folks, you know, the comments you made in 2016 when President Trump, then private citizen Trump, said John McCain wasn't a war hero. You said those comments were offensive, ridiculous, and a disqualifier as commander-in-chief. I get that you don't like the nastiness.
Yeah, I was running for president against Donald Trump.
Right now, but
we were in a campaign.
But Major Haley,
I mean, Kamala Harris basically said. Kamala Harris basically suggested Joe Biden was a segregationist, and then she became his vice president.
All right, we're out of time. I want to ask you who you got tonight, the San Francisco 49ers or the Kansas City Chiefs?
I want the 49ers to win so we can get rid of these conspiracy theories about Taylor Swift. Never in my life have I been motivated by anything other than football, but this time I think if 49ers win, it's perfect. It gets rid of all those conspiracy theories. But I think the Chiefs are probably going to win.
All right, Senator Marco Rubio, thanks so much. Have a great Sunday. Good luck on the Senate floor.